Democrats who have shared their fear, frustration, and doubts about President Biden's re-election are likely not feeling much better today after the president stumbled through a press conference on the world stage. President Biden went from the G20 Leaders Summit in India over the weekend to Hanoi, Vietnam, where he gave a pretty interesting news conference to reporters. And instead of actually answering questions from our commander-in-chief, he decided to ramble, to falsely attribute a quote to a John Wayne film. And he even made note that it was time for him to go to bed, all on the world stage. This went on until his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, finally came to the rescue, and the press team had to put an end to the disaster.
It is evening, isn't it? You know, there's that, one of my staff members said, remember the famous song, you know, Good Morning, Vietnam? Well, good evening, Vietnam. I'm just following my orders here. Staff, if anybody haven't spoken to, no, I ain't calling on you. Now it's just going to come to fruition in the G20, is making sure that we build a railroad all the way across the African continent. Think about it. The Indian looks at John Wayne and points to the Union soldier and says, he's a lion, dog-faced pony soldier. Well, there's a lot of lion, dog-faced pony soldiers out there about global warming. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed. We talked about making sure that the third world, the Southern Hemisphere had access to change it, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all. You can
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. You know, Martha, he's not at a factory in Ohio. He's not on the campaign trail. He's not at an off-the-record fundraiser, which it's all galling to see your president have that kind of moment there. But when you were on foreign soil, what kind of message is this sending around the world?
Well, that's a good question. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the message was. I listened to the entire thing this morning to make sure that I heard. And, you know, there are points made along the way there, but there's no sort of, this is the message that I want to send today after this meeting. Very conciliatory towards China in terms of what his intentions are. I heard your interview, Harris, with Senator Graham, and great points made during that about what an important moment this is and message this is to China. Who clearly views us as an adversary. And the president bent over backwards to make it clear that he does not see them as an adversary. I'm not sure why, but if there was any sort of through line, I would say that was it. But this is, you know, I was reading this article about Hunter Biden last night and how they watch over each other. And he said, like, I'm the guy who can go up to my dad on the plane and say, you need to close your eyes now, right? So maybe this trip needed to be reorganized a little bit. Obviously, you don't begrudge the man being tired. It's hard to do 5 countries, but in a small period of time. And he is 80 years old. But this is the job.
Yeah.
So he's now basically campaigning, I mean, you know, essentially, in a broad sense, for another term with every one of these appearances. How, in God's name, is that going to work for 4 more years if this is, you know, how taxing the actual job is? And I mean that respectfully. I just think that this was a mess. This was a mess.
It was a mess. And, you know, Harris, it struck me. I saw both President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris talking about meeting with Xi. And I asked our team to put these 2 shots together, these 2 sound bites. I want us to take a listen because these are the 2 people who are now going toe-to-toe with Xi Jinping. And I'm wondering if it instills confidence. Watch.
I hope I get to see Mr. Xi sooner than later. I've spent more time with him than any other world leader has, sum total, over the last 12 years. So I hope to get to see him again soon.
You were in the same room with China's number 2
Yes,
today.
I have actually met with President Xi as well.
Did you talk to him today?
Well, we exchanged pleasantries, yes. Yes.
But it's still a little tense.
I don't think it's as simple, if you will, as whether there's tension.
Pleasantries.
Yeah, I wish you would have explained that. So Senator Graham, Martha, you may have seen when you watched, really laid it out on what's happening with China right now. And it's really disturbing. I mean, he goes all the way back to COVID and how we really need to know, was that unleashed? What was that? Because it broke us for a while as a country. And now facing new threats with the border. And it's interesting to see those two talk about foreign policy with our greatest adversary at the moment. But Russia and North Korea are getting ready to meet. I mean, we have countries that are coming together. We're not invited to be at any of those tables. And I don't know if we want either of one of those people to actually be there anyway. But things are cooking now, and we're not even in the kitchen. We are left out of those world conversations. And so if you think your enemies are massing now, what's it going to be like if one of them actually leans in and makes a mistake, a minor incursion on the world stage, if you will?
And Pete, politically speaking, there's this NBC headline I couldn't get out of my mind. Democratic elite struggle to get voters as excited about Biden as they are. When party elites look at President Joe Biden, they see the second coming of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. When voters view the president, many see an old man. NBC doesn't often have harsh words for the president. That's pretty harsh.
That is pretty harsh. And the reality is the reason it was so urgent for them to go to Vietnam, they say, and they couldn't do the 9/11 ceremonies, is because they've got to build this relationship to counter China. But then he steps up to the podium and says nothing but good things about China. And I'm trying to understand what any semblance of coherence there is around our policy when we know exactly who China is. Why did they snub us and skip the G20? Because they don't want to sit around a table and talk about how many $1 trillion they can give to some bogus climate change fund. They're playing for keeps. And we're running around talking about climate change with someone who's talking about going to bed. And they want to take Taiwan. It's fundamentally unserious across the board. And of course, in this case, NBC finally acknowledged what everyone sees, which is an old guy stumbling around.
Yeah, Kennedy, politically hazardous. I mean, as we go into a general election here.
I mean, it's politically hazardous. It's globally hazardous. It's morally hazardous. You know, Martha talks about Hunter being the only one who can tell his dad to take a nap. Maybe Hunter needs to give his dad a little something to wake him up, because these episodes are happening with such great frequency. You know, this is not a one-off. This is not an obscure occurrence that happens every once in a while. This is pretty much a couple times a week we're seeing these gaffes and this mumbling, and that's why 70% plus of the American people, Democrats and Republicans, think that he is incapable of handling a second term. It is not going to get better. The decline has been very, very swift. It's like watching my grandpa trying to open a menu with a QR code at Chili's. It's not working.
Yeah, never a good thing when your press team has to shut you down. And that's exactly what happened.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.